How the Moon Affects Reproductive and Behaviors in Marine Animals by Olivia
and Jarelli.
Slay. Okay, so our key words: tide is the rising and falling of the sea. Usually happens twice in a lunar day. Tidal currents that can be predicted and can change in a very regular pattern. Movement of tide currents away from the shore or down tidal river, flood and overflow over a large amount of water and a large amount of quantity. Spring tide is the tide right after the full or new moon. You can see the difference between high and low tide very clearly during these times.
More keywords. Neap tide. The neap tides happen after the first and third quarters of the moon, where it can have high and low tides. Perihelion, where a point is located in the orbit of the planet that is closer to the sun. Aphelion, where the point is located in the orbit of the planet that is farthest from the sun. Lunar cycle, the moon journey around the earth. Lunar cycle, which affects the earth's behavior, time, etc.
Okay, the Great Barrier Reef annual mass spawning. So this began in Australia, and due to climate change and rising in temperatures, there's also coral bleaching that's making this process more. So this causes mass release of sperm and eggs. This happens the day of a full moon to also the next couple days after the full moon. Coral usually reproduce asexually, but once a year during the full moon they reproduce sexually. Only happens at the night when there are few predators, and this is the biggest breeding event in history.
How are sharks affected by the moon cycles? Moon cycles change the way sharks act and tend to be more aggressive when the moon is full. Sharks are easily triggered during the full moon.
Oyster reproduction.
During the first quarter of the lunar cycle, male oysters will release sperm and female oysters will release their eggs and reproduce in the water. When the moon is full, oysters tend to narrow down their shells. Once the moon phase changes, they will open up their shells. Black marlin. The black marlin fish are affected by the lunar cycle because they tend to always stay near the surface of the water when the moon is in its full moon phase.
Sea mussels. There is a high number of green mussels. They usually start spawning during a full moon or a new moon, and it's always right after or during. The marine worms. So the bristle worm, once there is a full moon, they will reproduce. Adult worms will rise to the surface during the full moon, and they only do this at night during the full moon. And they have their mating rituals. Apparently they do a little dance, and then once they are done, they happen to burst, which causes them to die afterwards.
Saltwater fish. Saltwater fish are affected by the moon because of the high and low tides that happen because of the moon's phases. In the higher tides, saltwater fish tend to be more drawn into hunting grounds.
The snookfish. During the periods of a full moon, the fish happen to release their eggs, and then during the new moon, they happen to feed way more often. And now we're excited.
We're excited. Yay!